Stars just did it. 6 straight multi-hit games for the Braves.
Welcome. Well, folks,
the
the New York Mets, again, doing whatever they could possibly do to lose. Whatever they need to do, the Mets figure out a way to do it and lose. Again tonight, losing to the Braves after the ugliest loss yesterday.
Flips one of the air out to left field. That'll drop in
and
for a
somehow
base hit.
finding a way to lose.
And that looping liner by
Folks,
Ozzie Albies makes it
are we
2-1 Braves
kidding
here in the top of the
ourselves?
6th inning.
Were
Able
we
to just serve it
duped?
into left field
Was
for the
this
RBI.
thi- was
Turning
this
into a nice
team
night for Ozzie Albies,
so
who was 2 for 3
us
with 2
as
RBIs.
much better than it actually is?
is.
Because, folks, I think we're seeing reality. This team is not good. This team is not average. This team is below average. Good teams find ways to win. Bad teams find ways to lose. And, folks, we are looking at a bad team. We're going to go over a lot today. So you know what? Do me a quick favor. It's not easy. Hit the like button. Subscribe if you're not yet subscribed. If you're a Mets fan, I feel for you. If you're not a Mets fan, you know what? You're quite lucky right now because being a Mets fan just when you thought, you know what? The Mets got their pitching staff back. Kodai Senga, Sean Manaea. We got a bullpen. Maybe the bats are going to get hot. You know what? Today, the bullpen, Ryan Helsley, Tyler Rogers, Bridget hold the lead, and they're going into the 6th inning. No. I mean, when you pitch, you don't hit. When you hit, you don't pitch. I mean, look, we have a losing formula right now. Very losing formula, but it is going deeper than that. Deeper. The DNA of this team seems to be rotten. You know? So what is going on here? I mean, I've said it for weeks. For weeks, I'm worried about the pitching staff, right? I'm worried about the pitching staff. But, what is at the core of this team's issue? Right? Does it go deeper than the pitching staff? Is it Carlos Mendoza? Is he having a huge sophomore slump? Is he not motivating the guys? Is the coaching staff not doing enough to improve the players? Because everybody stinks. Peterson was our only rock-solid guy. He failed miserably yesterday. Reed Garrett, one of our few pitchers, who was decent, good, failed miserably yesterday. Kodai Senga, decent job today, but again, Ryan Helsley, you bring him here to be a lockdown 8th-inning guy. He has not been a lockdown 8th-inning guy. I mean, folks, again, whatever the Mets need to do to lose, they will do it. Lindor's been the last couple games a lot better, but we need to see consistency. I was complaining last week. The Mets aren't getting out to any leads. They're not getting out to any leads. Well, in almost every game this week, we've gotten out to a lead. In fact, the past 3 games, we've gotten out to leads of 5 runs or more, but still found a way to blow it. Today, again, you know what? We scored 3 runs, but this is a game you should have won. You had your ace on the mound. You had your ace on the mound who pitched okay to decent, but good enough to win.
Yeah.
And with that bullpen, that lockdown bullpen, we should have got it done, especially after yesterday. And folks, I couldn't even. You know what, folks? Yesterday got me sick. I'm watching the game. I'm feeling good. 2 nights ago, we won 13-6, had a great game. Then we're up 6 runs, right? 6-0. We are up 6-0. Going into the 4th inning. David Peterson's on the mound and get pummeled. Reed Garrett didn't help out. So folks, I literally got sick yesterday. I got sick.
Before it's going to go down.
Headache, went to bed literally around 9:30. Didn't feel well because of these Mets. But, you know, the thing is, I had hope the night before. I had hope. And they just literally
throws over to Olsen and robs
stupid me. Anytime this team sucks me in, they snap back to reality the next night. And again, you know, you're seeing the highlights. We start the game off today honoring Pete Alonso, right? And I'm just, you know, trying to rationalize, even though yesterday could have been classified as the worst loss, could have been classified as the worst loss all year long. I'm just hoping today we get back on track. We honor Pete Alonso, the polar bear, and just get back to playing good ball, right? But again, I guess I'm just asking too much. I'm asking too much.
Good vibes.
Oh my God, explosive. How's it going, everybody? It's 1 o'clock in the morning. Oh my God.
To show why purple is the greatest league ever invented, we've hired Humpty Dumpty.
It feels like cruel punishment right now.
Infirm where you need it, reducing your aches and pains by up to 40%. Visit purple.com or a store near you.
All right, explosive. How we feeling? Scott, oh my God. Scott, you wrote this team is cooked. I would like to think I'm wrong, but this is just an awful team. Can't do anything right. Can't do anything right. You're absolutely right. I mean, you are absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Pete's got to be ready for
you know, it's
Gets
just
the fastball, hits it shortly past.
It's just really, you know, you want to come up with reason why the New York Mets are this bad, this pathetic. But it's just too many things. It's too many things to really put your finger on. And it's just super sad. It is just super sad. And you know what? I'm just going back really to the offseason. Sorry about the screen right now. I'm just going back to the offseason. And, you know, I think that's where these mistakes were actually initially made. You know, this pitching staff, again, early on, we were able to get through it. We were able to just patch things up. Tyler McGill, and you know, and company, and just, you know, right now, push has really come to shove, and the Mets just don't have the talent in the rotation. They really don't. They just don't have the talent in the starting rotation. Let's be honest. Let us be honest with ourselves.
All-time home run king, Pete Alonso.
The
Cohen family and the Mets organization are gifting you with a one-of-a-kind art piece.
This organization has
play home. Can he throw more than double what he's ever done
really
in terms of
incredible? That'd be really incredible.
Big if. Frankie Montas. Can he be a mediocre pitcher?
Center field. Harris back at the track.
David
the wall leaps.
You know, he was an all-star this year.
Francisco Lindor just to the right of center field. Puts the Mets on the board with his 22nd home run of the year. It is 1-0 New York in the bottom of the third.
And again, we made the decision this offseason to go with the starting rotation. And then I'm looking at the Soto move. The Soto move, we spent $800 million on one player, right? And now I'm like looking at it as almost an easy fix, a band-aid move. I mean, you know, it would have been tough for David Stearns to go out there and make some trades. It would have been tough. It's a lot easier to throw money at one player rather than to make 3 or 4 you know, very tough move, like, you know, Christian Yelich type move. I mean, they brought David Stearns here to be the boy genius, right? They brought him to think outside the box. You know, they didn't. I mean, honestly, some people think so, but, you know,
we talked about the high OPS.
You look at bottom end or lower echelon pitchers, and then you expect them to do something different that they've done in their whole career. It's even Shomanaya. I didn't speak about Shomanaya yet, but last year, when he pitched at a very high level, that is an anomaly. That is not what Sean Manaea has been throughout his career. So right now that Sean Manaea is coming back down to his average or back down to what he's been for the majority of his career, why are we surprised? Why are Mets broadcasters, why are people expecting Sean to be the guy that he was for 2 months rather than the guy that he was for 8 years? I mean, that's a little silly. I mean, that's a little silly. And we were relying a lot on Sean Manaea. We gave the guy $75 million. We were relying. Those were 2 aces. How crazy is that? 1 ace was Sean Manaea, who's only had 2 or 3 great months in his career, and Kodai Senga, a guy who's been injury prone in recent past and pitched 5 innings last year. So where else will we lead him? Where else? I mean, again, and then it makes so much sense. When your pitchers get hurt or if they don't produce, you're going to put stress on the bullpen. You're really going to put stress on the bullpen. And going into this year, I mean, we had Reed Garrett, we had Edwin Diaz, but this bullpen had a bunch of holes. So if you look at the whole pitching staff, the starters have questions, the bullpen had many questions. We had to make 3 trades at the deadline. I know A.J. Minter got hurt. All right, it happened. But still, you had to make a couple other huge maneuvers. So again, we started off this year with huge holes. So were we ever good? Were we ever good? Did we just capture magic last year? It's just really tough.
Swings and it's one deep down the right field line towards the corner, and that is off of the wall on the fly. That's going to give the Braves the lead. It's a double by Ozzie. That's his 3rd big base hit tonight, and it gives the Braves a lead here in the 8th inning as it's 4-3 at last. He just cooked that one off the wall in right field.
And even if people are saying, this Braves team always has our number, this is not the Braves team of last year or the year before that. They're missing many of their players. Acuna's not there. They don't have their all-star third baseman, Riley. They don't have many of their good players. So you can't even give me that. And the Braves have been down in the dumps. So, I mean, it's just, again, there's no excuse for it. There's no excuse.
To show why purple is the greatest sleep ever invented, we've hired Humpty Dumpty.
I'm sorry about that. Let me fix that audio thing.
That's because Purple's Gel Flex Grid is soft where you want it and firm where you need it, reducing your aches and pains by up to 40%. Visit purple.com or a store near you.
Here we go. All right. I don't even want to worry about that. All right, sorry about that. All right, folks. Could we hear me and only me? All right, so I mean, just let me know, how are we feeling? How are we feeling? Because I'm not feeling good. I'm feeling, I'm feeling like I got a big gut punch. I'll be honest. After losing 11 out of 12, that I got excited the other night. I got excited. It's how we won. We won 13-6. A bunch of our players up and down the lineup. Everybody got a hit, I think, except for McNeil. Everybody was productive. The team looked confident. Steve Cohen came out. He said he was going to be in the stands. It just felt like, what? This team, maybe they just were missing their mojo. Maybe they were incompetent for whatever reason. Maybe they didn't feel Steve Cohen had their backs. But Steve Cohen came out the day before the series started, said, I support Mendoza. I support this team. and that it's going to get better. I'm going to be in the stands for 3 games. And you know what? On day 1, fine. Day 2, slap in the face. Today, let's take the series. We have our ace on the mound. And again, just finding ways to lose. Finding ways to lose. I mean, in the 8th inning, you want your lockdown 8th inning guy. And I'm like, we have one. We have Ryan Helsley. This guy's supposed to be a closer, a great closer. And, I'm just seeing a lot of holes in that armor. That nasty slider that I saw in his first game, it's actually looking a lot more hittable. I don't know what it is, but, it just seems like whatever will go wrong, needs to go wrong, will go wrong. And I've been saying, you know what, this team needs Lindor to get going. We really need Lindor to get going. Today, Lindor gets going. I mean, had 4 at-bats. He had 3 hits, 2 runs scored, had an RBI, a home run, obviously. And he was looking good. He's been looking good the last 2 games. Actually, he hit a home run to center field. So, he actually hit it pretty decently. 410 feet, 107 miles per hour on the exit velo. But again, that was in the 3rd inning. You would think that would get the Mets going. You would think that would get the Mets going, inspire the team. But, the Braves came back in the 4th inning. They scored a run on an Ozzie Albies home run that tied it up. And Kodai Senga, he went into the 6th inning. Today, didn't complete the 6th inning. It was a decision by Mendoza to bring in Tyler Rogers. Tyler Rogers would surrender, a hit. He would give up, runs. And, that one big run obviously was the difference because the Mets lost by 1 run. And Rogers, you put a good package together for him. Helsley, you put a good package together for him. And, this was supposed to support Diaz. Diaz, obviously a couple games ago, he gave up a big home run. It just seems like every negative aspect, every play is rubbing off on everybody else. I guess we're all humans. Positivity, winning rubs off. And also losing rubs off. Bad plays rub off on each other. And we just have such a stench in that clubhouse of mediocrity, of, just expecting to lose. Explosive. You're right. Stearns can care less about overusing this bullpen because most are free agents. He will burn them to the ground and not sign any of the bullpen arms back. Well, you know what? I mean, we did give up a lot of prospect capital. So, you really would expect us to use them. But, the thing is, it's about winning. What do we got to do to win? Helsley, Tyler Rogers. Tyler Rogers, his arm's not going to fall off. He throws 80 miles per hour. It's about making sure these guys are effective. So if overusing them is going to lead to them being ineffective, yes, then that is a huge problem. But that's a problem Mendoza and Stearns should be able to figure out. Now, I was looking to at least win 2 out of 3 so that there would be a little more excitement going into the next series, going into our next, I would say, chapter, because we have a very big prospect. Nolan, the next Nolan Ryan, a couple years back, way back, obviously we traded away, but this next Nolan has a chance to be a very, very positive force for this team. I'm just hoping right now we use him in the right way. And, he is going to be somebody that we could see if he's going to be a potential solution for our team this year for the playoff run, as well as next year. but it's all about the future for this kid. Nolan McLean is 24 years old, 6'2". He's 8-5 in the minors this year, 2.45 ERA. Got a very nasty slider. He's got a crazy spin rate. He's already thrown 114 innings. And that's what I was also looking at in his career. How many innings has he, maxed out at? So I'm not really sure how crazy we're going to get in terms of letting this kid go long. We need somebody to be effective, somebody to eat innings. But, I don't think they're going to let this kid throw 7 innings for the next 6 starts. That would make him go to 170 innings, which he's never been close to that. But I do think that this kid has a potential. I think he has a lot of potential to show what the future could be for this rotation. And that's what I'm envisioning. We need a whole overhaul in this rotation, a whole overhaul. In my mind, I can't rely on Minaya. I can't rely on Senga. Those guys I can't rely on. They have shown us that they are not reliable. David Peterson going forward, that's a guy that, I could still work with. That's a guy that I can keep. But, who else? Clay Holmes? I mean, he's not showing me that he, I'm not seeing enough from him. I'm really not seeing enough. The guy's tired, and rightfully so. So right now in the rotation, you have one guy who I'm just confident in. Just one guy. So we're going to see. Is Nolan McLean a solution for the future? Then hopefully after that, and hopefully very quickly, we'll see Brandon Sproat. And I just really hope that these guys are solutions and that they can provide positive performances, because after them, what do we have? And that's scary. That is scary to think that, besides these 3 guys, 2-3 guys, Jonah Tong, Brandon Sproat, what do we have for this year? Not really much. Oh, another guy. You're 100% right. But you know what? Christian Scott's a guy I forgot because of the injury, but it would be damn nice for him to actually come back. That's a guy. I just felt so good about him last year because he was a young guy, really only young guy in the rotation, and the Mets haven't developed any pitchers in quite a long time. The days of DeGrom, Syndergaard, even Wheeler, but he was traded. I mean, that was over a decade ago. Who in the last 10 years have the Mets really developed in the starting pitching? And that's how teams win. That's how the Brewers, they built their team around pitching. Now their offense is clicking as well, but that's how these teams, really that are successful. You got to have pitchers. You got to have a bunch of pitchers who can get the other team out. It's so simple. If you cannot get the other team out, you're not going to win. Master of Coin. Is that vaunted pitching lab actually real, or is it a place to launder money? Honestly, right now, the pitching lab is, it seems like a fairy tale this year, because who the hell is a beneficiary of being in the pitching lab? Really? I mean, last year you could say, a bunch of people. You could say Sean Manaea. You could even say Jose Quintana. He did good the last 5 or 6 starts. Luis Severino. They had a couple guys from the bullpen, scrappy pitchers who did really good. Phil Maton jumping out at me, being the best guy. But this year, the pitching lab has like a negative effect. But, also I was thinking, and somebody brought this to my attention. They're saying, this guy I was talking to, he was saying maybe the pitching lab has been doing the same thing year in, year out, and other teams have really caught up to what Mets are doing, what analytics Mets pitchers are using, and now that it's become less effective. And I think there may be something to that. If you say, you know what, the Mets are working on spin rate, sliders, attacking a certain weakness of the hitters, and the other team has counter analytics, and they're wise to what the pitching lab, does, that can have an effect. But I was always, an impression, not only strategically does the pitching lab help, but I always thought the pitching lab was supposed to get pitchers better. Sean Manaea, just like Driveline. Driveline is something that helps pitchers improve, get the best out of them. Driveline got Sean Manaea a couple years ago to put extra velocity on his fastball. But the pitching lab, again, hasn't really improved any of these existing pitchers, but it's yet to be seen. Let's see how these young kids turn out, because that's also would be an answer if the pitching lab is effective. If Nolan McClain comes up and he is just as effective in the major leagues as he has been in the minor leagues, I'm like, okay, I'll give the pitching lab a little credit. If Sproat does the same thing, all right, I give you a little credit. But again, you're 100% right. The pitching lab has been straight garbage this year. Garbage. It's been laughable. What's up, Crispy? What else is to say? A lot of blame to go around. I blame Stearns, but where's Steve Cohen? He's like a beaten man ever since 2022, and 2023 collapses. You know what, folks? We can't. I'm just thinking about it. You're 100% right. I mean, like, we're collapsing way too much. But again, everybody's like, is this a collapse? The Mets have really stunk for months now. They've stunk for months. I mean, I would classify it as a collapse for one reason. Because the Mets, from June last year in 2024 to June this year in 2025, had the best record in baseball. So I wasn't looking at it for a month stretch, a 2-month stretch, a 3-month stretch, for literally a year. For a year, the Mets were had the best record in baseball. So that's why, Crispy, I was a little like, all right, you know what? Everybody said Stearns stinks and this and that. I'm like, all right, give him a chance to fail. Give him a chance to fail. His team has the best record in baseball. They made the playoffs in year one, went 2 games shy of the World Series, and up until this June, had the best record in baseball. Now, I got to say it, since June, and even a little further back than that, the Mets have been failing, and they've been failing miserably. They've really been failing miserably. Just if the Mets were 500 and mediocre, if they were 500 and mediocre, that would have been a failure. But the Mets are playing well below 500. So that's an absolute disaster. An absolute disaster. So again, like, how are we going to fix this? In the short term, we have those arms coming. And I do subscribe to the fact that if you bring these kids up, these phenoms, that it can bring positive energy to the clubhouse. And it also can bring positive energy to the rotation. The effect that Juan Soto was supposed to have on the lineup, making everybody around him better, stronger, making the lineup more solid. Hopefully, if you have a young guy coming up from the minor leagues and he is dominating or he's pitching at a higher level, it motivates other guys to get their gears and going. I remember a couple years ago when we had DeGrom here and we had Max Scherzer here, and we had I forget the guy that went to Toronto, Chris Bassett. I remember every single time one of them would go out of the game, they would go in the dugout and they would all talk about mechanics. They would all talk about what's working, and one impressive start after the other. And that I think had a huge positive effect on the rest of the rotation. Everybody was competing with each other in a friendly way, and they would also help each other out. What was working? What wasn't working? They would help each other when Scherzer was pitching. He would help out the rest of the other pitchers. So I want to get back to that. It's not every man for himself. We got to help teammates, got to help their other teammates out. But the thing is, when the whole rotation stinks, you're not going to give advice. You're just not. I mean, anybody who's been on a team, if you're going through a rough spell and you're not producing, it's tough for you to help out your teammate. It's tough for you to give positive advice or even criticism. And that's what a lot of these Mets players need. A lot of these Mets players need to be critiqued. A lot of these Mets players need those words of wisdom. I'm putting a lot on these kids, but hopefully at least they can have that positive impact on the rotation. Chris, you just wrote, does anyone else miss DeGrom? 10-5, 2.86, great stats. And that's with a cold stretch. Seth Lugo is having another good year, 8-6, 3.77. I feel a little worse about Seth Lugo. And I know DeGrom is Jacob DeGrom, but number one, the Mets gave him an offer, $120 million over 3 years. And this was coming off a huge, injury spell over the last couple of years. I mean, DeGrom got injured. He got injured. It's been time since he's been good, and he's been good this year. Would I want him on this team as a 37-year-old? Yeah, I love him, but there's good and bad with DeGrom. But at the end of the day, the Mets did offer him a contract. He went elsewhere. More money, more years. It's just really tough. Last year, he wouldn't have helped us. This year, he would have tremendously helped us. But if he's the only guy pitching well, and I'm paying him $40-something million, it's a tough question. If he was younger, yes, I would definitely want him. But I don't know. I guess I'm a little kind of, I don't want to say hurt, but since he kind of went out the door, it's not good riddance. I love DeGrom. He was one of my top 3 favorite Mets, but there's good with bad with DeGrom. A lot of good. You got to pay the guy a lot of money, and he has that chance of being injured. Having another 2-13 stretch is just inexcusable. Goes without saying. Really goes without saying. You really think they would fire Mendoza? You know what? If they keep going at this pace. Now, I'll tell you this. I thought there was no way Mendoza would get fired this year in year 2 after going to 2 games short of the World Series last year. No way. Only way he gets fired is if this season is a complete disaster. And if the Mets are doing unprecedented things, losing in unprecedented ways. Now, if you put things in perspective, this season right now is a disaster, right? I'm going to give a defense to Mendoza as well. All right, so this season's a disaster. The Mets are losing in inexcusable ways. They have looked lifeless at times. They have done things to lose. They have played poorly in the field. They have pitched poorly when the offense gives them runs. And when the offense gives them runs, then the pitching goes bad. When the starting pitching is good, the bullpen falters. When the bullpen is dominant, the starting pitching is horrible. So one facet of the team is always preventing the team from winning. How is that the case? It's a lot of it goes to do with leadership. A lot of these guys were on a team last year. So how does the team go from the best record in baseball, 2 games shy of the World Series, beating the Phillies, beating the Braves when they needed to, beating the Brewers, and then all of a sudden now not even able to beat bottom feeders, and giving up 9 runs in an inning, getting 1 hit, losing 5-0 leads or 5-run deficits, or not deficit, being ahead 5 runs and blowing those leads in 3 consecutive games. That's, these are ridiculous ways the Mets are finding ways to lose. It's not like it's a hard-fought game. It's the 3-2. The other team, found a way to pull it out in the 9th or 10th inning. No, it's just ridiculous ways the Mets are giving these games away. I think the Mets really miss Jose Iglesias for leadership and clubhouse effect. It's just I loved Iglesias, what he brought to the table, right? I loved his energy. I loved, I just loved everything about him. When he put on that concert last year at Citi Field and you had all the Mets players run out, giving each other hugs. I mean, it was just, that was when the magic started, in my opinion. I mean, that's when I got like a magical feel that I'm like, this team is special. This team is special. But it's just so hard to imagine that this one guy had that much of an effect. You would think that, the other talented players like Lindor, who was MVP level, but, did Iglesias' presence on the team impact Lindor so much that he was almost won the MVP? I mean, I like to think that, these guys have enough within them to motivate themselves and utilize their abilities, utilize their talent. They don't need a Jose Iglesias to pat him on the back saying, I mean, you shouldn't really need that at this level. I can understand that enthusiasm and that energy can help out in certain situations, but overall, we've just seen the Mets just, play pathetically. Pods are promoting his next concert at Petco. Oh, man. Honestly, this, bad losing, I take this back. I feel like a switch turned against the Padres. Remember the Padres series a couple weeks back? The Mets got swept. It just felt like that series. And also in that series, you saw Jose Iglesias still buddy with everybody, Lindor, everybody. But I trace it back. It just feels like when we got swept, it really took a lot out of us. All right, so but getting back to the Carlos Mendoza defense, right? So we know that maybe motivating these guys, developing these guys, in-game decisions, he's made some mistakes, right? He's left a lot on the table to be desired. Maybe he's a sophomore in his sophomore season. Can guys regress? I mean, obviously you're not going to be perfect. He doesn't have that big experience on his resume. He's not a Buck Showalter. So I expect some mistakes. I expect some regression. I don't expect this. Now, that's the bad about him. But in his defense, like I said, the starting pitching staff didn't have what it takes to be a World Series contender. Doesn't have it. Way too many what ifs. What ifs. And the backup pitchers, you had Griffin Canning. I miss him. I honestly, I really miss Griffin Canning. I said this, weeks ago. I miss the days of Griffin Canning. But, was Griffin Canning enough to bridge the gap and say, hey, you know what? This rotation, not good, but you have Griffin Canning and Tyler McGill. Now we're going to be good enough to be a World Series contender. No, their starting rotation was never good enough. Never, ever good enough. Now, did you have that much confidence in the kids that we're about to see? Brandon Sproat, Nolan McLean, Jonah Tong. Did you figure, okay, you know what? Griffin Canning, they're going to eat up innings. Tyler McGill, going to eat up innings. But really, if we need an ace pitcher or we need somebody to take it to the next level, we have 3 arms who could all be a number 1 or a 2. Well, if that's the case, we're going to have an opportunity to see one of those guys in another day or so. So we're going to see that. But again, that line of thinking with the starting pitchers is not correct with David Stearns. He's proven that has failed. He's failed. Too many what ifs. Shormania, hopefully he recaptures something. But I think that he's going to be more along the lines of he's been in his entire career. And that's being extremely mediocre and inconsistent. And those guys, you have, those 2 guys at the top of rotation, Manaea and Senga. I mean, we need an ace, folks. We need an ace. We need a guy that we can rely on to stop these streaks. We certainly don't have that. DeGrom, he was that guy. I mean, DeGrom could literally just close the door. We just didn't score for him. We just didn't score for him. DeGrom would love these 5-run leads. He would love that 6-run lead that we had yesterday that the Mets just literally gave to Atlanta. Like, please take it. We're up by 6 runs. No, you can have it. Get 9 runs. I mean, that was ridiculous. Well, this is more along my lines. Stearns doesn't have the cojones to fire Mendy mid-season. He is ultra-conservative and risk-adverse to the point it's sickening. He doesn't even seem angry about it. When is he going to yell and rant? I kind of tend to agree with that. I kind of, I would like to see him be aggressive, and that's why when he made these trades for these bullpen guys, I'm like, wow. These are like the most aggressive moves that Stearns has made in his Mets tenure. Really getting these guys, giving up prospects. So I gave him some credit. But you're right. Does he have the cojones to fire a Mendoza, especially a couple months or 6 months after, or however far the World Series were, 8 months ago when he was 2 games shy? I mean, this was, I would say one of the most positive things from 2024, Carlos Mendoza potentially having a young manager that you can mold and you could develop and you can see him get better and better over time. But, just like the team, Mendoza has dramatically regressed. And again, I'm not ready to throw in the towel on this season. So if it means firing a Mendoza to potentially save this season, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. We all have to remember the financial obligation Steve Cohen has in this team, which is close to $350 million. Are we going to say, all right, $350 million spent in 2025? Maybe I could potentially get another manager to spark the team, but I don't want to fire Mendy. At the end of the day, you went all in. So that means even if it's August, mid-August, if you have an opportunity to save this season, you still got to go all in and you got to make that move. Now, there was an article the other day that came out. I don't know who saw it, but it was basically detailing which managers would be potential fits if Carlos Mendoza got fired. Now, I had it saved here. I just want to find it. Okay, so they were speaking to an insider about the Carlos Mendoza situation yesterday. So it was asked, is there any chance that the Mets will cut ties with Mendoza should the Mets continue this horrible slump? So according to New York baseball insider John Heyman of the New York Post, he expressed his belief that Mendoza would retain his job beyond this season, no matter how the rest of this campaign plays out. So that's John Heyman, supposedly plugged into the Mets situation. I mean, I think that is absurd. If this thing continues to go down the toilet, how can you continue to accept failure? But again, so Mendoza goes, not Mendoza, Heyman goes, we're talking hot seat in NYC. Mendoza, no chance for him to go, Heyman said. No chance is there any real hot seat for Mendoza, nor should there be. So not only is Heyman saying he's not going anywhere, John Heyman believes there shouldn't be any hot seat for Mendoza. I think that's a bit ridiculous as well. So he says it's because he had a terrific first year. This year, we're 3/4 of the way through. It's been a bit of a disappointment, but we're not going to lay that at Mendoza's feet. This is John Heyman's word. I mean, like, why would we lay failure at the manager's feet? I mean, like, John Heyman, you're 100% correct. A good manager takes responsibility for his team's struggle, but that doesn't mean he should shoulder the blame in actuality. And Mendoza shouldn't be criticized for his stars like Soto and Lindor failing to get the job done at the plate, nor his pitching staff wearing thin as the season goes on. But even if his job isn't on the line, Mendoza certainly has to be feeling the urgency to hold on to a playoff spot, which isn't a guarantee given the way the Mets played through their recent 7-game losing streak. All right, this is John Heyman's opinion. So John Heyman doesn't believe the manager is responsible for how bad the team's played. I mean, I think that's a little silly. Any manager that's been fired had players underperform or had players fail. Now, with the Mets, it's how they're underperforming. It's how they're failing. And it's also who's failing, right? I can understand if we didn't have the talent, or I can understand if we were fighting in these games, and I can understand if we were playing solid fundamental baseball. Then, you know what? Mendoza, you're fine, but we're not playing fundamental. We're not playing anywhere close to flawless. We're not playing anywhere close to the level we played last year. So why wouldn't I look at the manager? Why wouldn't I assess the manager? If I had a report card on the manager, what grades would he get in every category? Development, 0. His coaches beneath him. Has his coaches been developing the pitchers or at least figuring out why these pitchers aren't going longer in the game? So his employee, I guess his staff is to be doing a good job with the coaches. I got to say, that's a low grade as well. His in-game decision making, I've noticed a lot more questionable moves. So his in-game decision making is not good. His leadership, his motivation, his tone in the press conferences, not inspiring me. I don't know if it's inspiring you, but he's not inspiring me. So if he's not inspiring me, how is he inspiring the guys in the clubhouse? And the proof is in the pudding. The results are on TV. The results are in the ballpark when we show up for games. It's not working. And the Mets early on were motivated to play at home. They played better at home, but now the Mets don't give a damn where they play. Home or the road, we'll find a way to lose. So it's just getting extremely sad, extremely pathetic. And whether the insiders believe it or not, I mean, they're not spending $350 million. They're not flushing $350 million down the toilet. That's Steve Cohen. And, Steve Cohen is the boss. He's the boss. So I got to believe that he's got to be putting pressure on David Stearns and wanting answers. Like, what is going on? He gave a vote of confidence a couple of days ago, but that doesn't mean if he gave a vote of confidence on April 10th, that's going to last the rest of the season. 2 weeks down the road, if the Mets are out of the playoffs by August 31st, but they're still in striking distance, I could definitely see Steve Cohen taking a much different tone. All right, so I think this was the article that I found the other day. Okay, so let me actually show you. Wait, I'm gonna fix this. Oh man. Wait, I just gotta fix something. All right, so I was looking at this article. So 5 potential managers to replace Carlos Mendoza if the Mets part ways with the skipper. So this came out a couple of days ago. So the first guy that they have as a potential replacement is Carlos Beltran. So they write, perhaps the most logical replacement for Mendoza is the man once on the verge of managing this team. Although Beltran and the organization agreed for him to become the team's next manager in November of 2019, the Mets ultimately pulled the plug before the season began due to his involvement in the Houston Astros sign stealing scandal. I mean, that at the time, I didn't really kind of get it. Like, if the Mets, they kind of knew Beltran was involved before that, and then you hire him, and then now, yeah, it's getting more serious. Let's fire the guy. I didn't like that. But now, after 6 years later, MLB's ire towards the Astros and those involved in the scandal appears to have cooled off. Could the climate be calm to bring Beltran back to Queens? The Mets have already shown a willingness to keep Beltran in the organization, hiring him as a special assistant to the general manager, Billy Epler, in 2023. The relationship could help open the door for Beltran to finally become the skipper if the team moves on for Mendoza. Okay, so Carlos Beltran, he was always a guy I personally wanted to see on the team. I always personally wanted to see because of the effect that he had on, the Astros, on the effect that I've seen him have on teammates. And, I like the fact that he had ties to being a Met. He seemed like I know he had times where he was booed, but I don't know. He was just a guy that I just wanted to see if he could make it here. And, if Carlos Mendoza didn't work out, if Carlos Mendoza was given a chance, why can't Carlos Beltran be given a chance? All right, so that's the first guy. Now, the second guy on this list, and this is just a random list, is Mr. Terry Collins. All right, so Steve Cohen invested heavily in building the Mets' current roster because he believes this team can get to a World Series. Yeah, undoubtedly. Spent $800 million on one man, $350 million on this payroll. He spent a lot of damn money. So if Mendoza is let go, could the Mets turn to the man who most recently led them to the World Series in 2015? Since being released by the Mets in 2017, Collins hasn't managed, but like Beltran, he has stayed connected to the organization, serving as a special assistant to the general manager. Okay, now here's the thing. So at 76, Collins' age might make him hesitant to return. But Angels manager Ron Washington, who's 73, he serves as a strong reminder that age is just a number. Known for his passion and commitment to strong baseball fundamentals, could the Mets turn to Collins? All right, here's my opinion. When Collins was fired from the New York Mets, me personally, I wasn't so big on that fire. I really wasn't at that time. I kind of grew accustomed to Collins. But right now, unless you want to give him an interim tag, I don't think there's any way I would invest time in Terry Collins at this point. I really wouldn't. I think, I'm not going to say the game has passed him by, but I'd rather invest in a guy like Carlos Beltran, a younger guy, if you're going to go that way. And also Terry Collins, he's more old school. It's a whole new generation, even 10 years. 10 years. I know he changed towards the end, but even David Wright, I was listening to his interview a couple days ago, and he was even saying how much the game has changed. So am I going to go to a 76-year-old guy who's not really charismatic, who is not really, I think, wasn't really a player's manager? I'm not really going to go to him. Okay, so the next guy on this respective list is none other than Dave Martinez. So Dave Martinez was the Nationals manager. He was dismissed. He was fired. A surprising report emerged by GM Mike Rizzo, who let go Martinez. He lost his job, and he initially refused to fire the manager. Now, that's a true display of unwavering faith in a manager. Oh, wow. So Mike Rizzo didn't want to fire him. Okay. That kind of says a lot about Martinez. Sure, the Nationals' 40-70 record at the bottom of the NL East doesn't exactly enhance Martinez's resume at first glance. However, given his remarkable run to a World Series title with Washington in 2019, could his managerial skills rebound to top form? I'm a quick one on this one. Dave Martinez, yes, he's had some success, but he's not really a guy that I would be like, okay, yeah, let's go again. I want our next manager, our future manager. If we're gonna fire Mendoza, a young sophomore guy, a guy that we're just gonna give up on, a guy who came 2 games shy of the World Series, I want a guy that I would feel excited about. And I sure would not feel excited about Dave Martinez. Okay, so it looks like we're going back to a lot of old guys. So Buck Showalter is on this list as well. All right. I think I realized part of the problem. All right, so that list that I just read, and it was from an article, who wrote? Michael O'Brien. These 5 candidates: Carlos Beltran, Terry Collins, Dave Martinez, Buck Showalter, and then the last one was Bud Black. There's really these candidates, I'm not really excited about any of them, really. Carlos Beltran would be my top guy on this list, but I would really have to explore beyond this list because I don't want to go back to retreads. Personally, I'm not a fan of retreads, and this list is full of retreads. Carlos Beltran is a guy I would just, be curious about how talented he could be as a manager just because he's never done it. For the New York Mets. So I'd like to see that. Timur, I went to Wednesday's game and they were yelling "Fire Mendoza." Honestly, I think we're going to hear a lot of that in the games. The games are just so pathetically bad. So pathetically bad. Game, what's up? Only Wally Backman could turn this team around, but the Mets blacklisted him from MLB. Yeah, I would have liked to see what Wally Backman could have done with the Mets years ago. But yeah, that's a tricky situation with Backman. Am I worried about Diaz opting out? Well, I mean, the latest report is, I mean, I saw that he wants to opt out, that he's going to be opting out. So the question isn't if he's going to opt out. It seems like he is going to opt out. But am I worried about it? I mean, it really depends on how we end this season. It really does. It really does. If this team fights, if this team claws, if this team goes far in the playoffs, and Diaz obviously would have to be a big part of it. Yeah, I would be very upset if we lost that, because obviously you go far and, we're successful. But if this team just continues to fail and this team continues to show that they need a big overhaul, then I'm going to be more along the lines like we're not even close. We need to break this thing down. We need to kind of rebuild. But I don't want to rebuild either. I'd rather retool. But is spending $100+ million on a guy who's already in his low 30s, is that going to be the best allocation of resources when we know we're not ready and we know we're not close and we have to do so much? But again, it's going to be how this season pans out. If Sproat comes up and McLean comes up and, maybe Tom comes up, if we see Jet Williams and we see that we have a lot of young talent, and then you have the guys start shaping up. Everybody's consistent. Lindor, obviously down the line, Alonso, and you get production from Mauricio, and everybody shows you that this team has talent. Then, yeah, obviously you want to keep a top echelon closer. I know, some people, and I saw this too as well, and maybe you were alluding to this. Some people would have wanted the trade deadline, hope the trade deadline would have been pushed back a little, because if the Mets were out of it, imagine the Mets put, and I'm not saying that I would have done this, but imagine the Mets put Edwin Diaz on the market, knowing Edwin Diaz is going to opt out, right? He's going to opt out. So potentially you trade him, you get a ridiculous package for Edwin Diaz. And that you're not going anywhere because you're already out of it. And then the Mets could sign him after this. I mean, I thought that would have been like that's a more out there scenario, but that's something that if the Mets showed that they were out of it at the deadline, at least it could have been a scenario to ponder. Buck deserved a third year, but I understand Stearns wanting to hire his own guy. That was a tough one. I didn't like the fire. I really didn't. I was hoping that maybe they could collaborate together, give Buck a little time. I mean, Buck had that really good first year, with the Mets, 101 games. How many Mets managers won 101 games? And I kind of think that Buck knew which buttons to press. When Buck was managing, I knew that no other manager in the other dugout could really outsmart him. Buck really knew his stuff. I was very impressed with that. And the players liked him. You saw Lindor's, daughter that was always cute in the press conference. But the players, they seemed to like him. And, it didn't work out in 2023. And I'm not going to blame it all on Buck, but, it didn't make Buck shine. When Stearns got here, if Buck, built on 2022, there was really a no-brainer. But 2023 could in some way be blamed on a guy like Buck Showalter. But, along those lines, if you're David Stearns and you evaluated Buck Showalter like that, I mean, you got to be looking at Carlos Mendoza. You got more talent. You have more resources allocated in this team. And this team, if this team fails, that I think is going to be worse than 2023. Because at least in 2023, we kind of gave up. We gave up at the deadline. And the last 2 months, we were just treading water and, we weren't fighting for anything. Now, we didn't give up. We went all in. And we tried to enhance our talent. But, look at that, folks. I mean, that's what really upsets me. After this trade deadline is when the Mets really sunk. I mean, this is how the players responded. Usually, you hear a lot of former athletes say, oh, what motivated you? And this is actually what David Wright said. David Wright said in 2015, what motivated him and the guys was that the Mets leadership, GM, ownership invested in the team. They believed in them. They got Cespedes. They got Juan Uribe. They made big moves, and those big moves gave everybody else confidence because, hey, management believes in us. They think we can go far, and that made everybody play better. Now, 2025, you see all these prospects being traded. You see the Mets trying to make this team better, but the players in this case didn't respond, right? And when players don't respond, I always look at leadership. And that's why Carlos Mendoza, in my opinion, should 110% be on the hot seat. All right, I gotta get a drink. I'll be right back. Be right back. See, I got a bad back, so I got my pillow right here. I got a chiropractor appointment at 9 o'clock, but I'll be right back. Uh-oh. I'm just reading. The Mets, they just entered unwanted territory no team reached in 8 years after the loss to the Braves. Wow, the Mets, again, making history. So according to Clutch Point, in recent weeks, it seemed that the New York Mets had put their rough stretch earlier in the season completely in the rearview mirror. But in the past 15 games, it has gone beyond poorly for the New York Mets, as they are in the middle of a 2-13 stretch. Pathetic. Made far worse by their 4-3 loss to the Atlanta Braves tonight. The Mets have fallen so far off the pace in the NL East standings, with the division-leading Phillies now up by 5 games. You know, folks, I don't know if you're like me, but when the Mets were doing well, I would look at the standings every day. I look at the standings probably 10 times a day when the Mets were in first place, when the Mets were winning. I don't know. I liked seeing the Mets get another win, be in first place. I always looked at it. I haven't looked in the standings in weeks now. I haven't looked, except checking how far back they are, but I don't look at the standings all day long like I used to. But okay. So the Mets have fallen so far off the pace that they were on. And I also remember when we were like 17 games above 500, we were like 63 and 46. I'm like, even if the Mets go 500, even if they go 500, we're going to get 90 wins. I mean, I should do that analysis again because actually, let me do that right now. I'm curious. And then I'll tell you which new history we made. And it's not good. It's not good. All right, so the unfortunately the stinky Mets right now are 64-57. So that's 7 games above 500, 1-9 in the last 10. All right, so I got my handy dandy calculator. So 64 plus 57 is 121. So there's 162 games. So that's 41 games left. So, I mean, divide that by 2. That's pretty easy. So that's about 20 wins. So if they win 20 more games and they go 500, they're going to get to 84 wins. 84. I think that's well off the pace for a wild card. I mean, last year, the wild card, you needed, around 90 wins. This year, you might not need that high. But is 84 wins going to be enough? Is 84 wins going to be enough to get in? And that's just if the Mets play 500 ball. And the Mets have played far worse than 500 ball in the last 15 games. In fact, they played 13 games under 500 in the last 15. So it's tough. It is just tough. Game. Mets fans need to start a boycott against the team until both hitting coaches are fired. Kind of reasonable. Oh, I don't know. Boycott's kind of tough because you want to know why? Because in the back of my head, I'm like, all right, then baseball's going to be gone potentially if the lockout situation doesn't go right. Then I'm going to eat my words, and and I'll be like, oh, boycotting a couple of years ago just because the Mets stunk. But I agree. I mean, we got to do something drastic. Maybe make signs. Maybe start, get the chance a little more creative. But definitely, yeah, putting pressure on the organization. But I do think the fans definitely have a right to do so because of the fact that we've invested so much time, energy, and money into supporting this team. I mean, look at this, folks. It's 2:10 in the morning, and we're here talking about this team that has given us nothing good to talk about. I mean, nothing good to talk about. I mean, so time and energy is what we're doing right now. So, and I know we spent a lot of money. I mean, like me, I spent a ridiculous amount of money watching this team. But it's my entertainment. It's what I love to do. It's I follow this team for decades and decades and decades. So we have a lot invested. So we're more willing to shell out money and shell out obviously our hard-earned money. But we need something in return. You don't want to get smacked in the face by the teams not really responding. And again, the Mets, this version of the Mets did not respond to any of the deadline moves. They were not inspired by the Mullins move. They were not inspired by the Tyler Rogers move, the Ryan Helsleys. They were not inspired by Gregory Soto. David Wright, that team was inspired by Juan Uribe. Cespedes was a beast. But, it just kind of shows you with different groups, with different clubhouses, how they act. One clubhouse in 2015 got excited, got motivated. It's just interesting. It's just interesting. But again, the leadership in that clubhouse was different. Everybody's saying, why was David Wright the captain and why Lindor was never made captain? Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing. That's the only thing. I'm like, I really don't want to see baseball go anywhere in 2 years. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. Boycotting before the strike it's not the best. It's not the best time. I want to know what happened to the we spoke about this before. The pitching lab right now, the enamor of the pitching lab, the allure, I think we got a sideline, talking about really the pitching lab. Like, we praise the pitching lab as being so special, so magical. I mean, the pitching lab has been an absolute and utter failure. Who have we developed? Who have we really taken to the next level, pitching wise? I mean, early on, you could say, I guess, give the pitching lab credit. Maybe the pitching lab throughout the course of the season, you can see, holes in the pitching lab. But early on, Clay Holmes, decent. Tyler McGill, Griffin Canning. I would say Griffin Canning is probably the biggest result of the biggest positive result of the pitching lab. Although his last starts weren't as good, he had some really good starts in April and May. So Griffin Canning is the one candidate that I would say, was a positive beneficiary of the magical pitching lab. Other than that, the pitching lab's been a complete joke. Yeah, so like I was saying, tomorrow morning, I'm going to the chiropractor. I got to crack my back. If the Mets get swept this weekend, Monday is going to be a dark day for this team. I mean, how much darker can it get than it already is? But I guess it might be, a darker day because let's just say Nolan McLean, let's just say he fails, right? And let's just say he looks nothing like he just needs a lot more work. I think that would be a huge blow because Mets fans, including myself, are heaping a lot of pressure on this young kid, Nolan McLean. But you know what? I say young kid, but he's 24. It's not like he's a 20, 21-year-old. He's 24. If he's going to have a successful major league career, he's got to be in the big leagues now. I mean, even when you project that 6 years of, arbitration, he's going to be a free agent at 30, 31. So, the kid's got to get off. So next year he's going to be in his first year at 25 years old. The Mets, I don't want to say if they're doing a good job, but, they're holding a lot of these pitching candidates until they're 24, 25. Even Christian Scott, when he made his debut, he was about to be 25. Sproat, same thing. I think he's 24 or 25. You know what's really interesting? I always like to see the Mets' top draft picks over the years. Right? Who was the number one draft pick in 2001? So I'm looking at it right now. So this year we picked Mitch Voigt. We picked him at number 38. Last year we picked Carson Bench. So Carson Bench looks phenomenal. He's at AAA already. He's batting over 300. Looks phenomenal. Hopefully potential center fielder. So that looks good. The year before that, dud. In 2023, we picked Colin Hewick. We picked him at pick number 32. Yeah, and he looks – I mean, I think this year is a little better than last year, but so far that's a big work in progress. The year before that, in 2022, we picked Kevin Parada at number 11. Well, this is the top pick. So I know we also picked Jet Williams a couple picks later, but it's the top pick in each draft. So our first selection was Kevin Parada. We know that didn't work out too well, although he's played a little better this year as well. In 2021, our top pick was Kumar Rocker. We ended up not pursuing that pick, not signing Kumar Rocker. In 2020, oh my God, our first pick at number 19 was Pete Crow Armstrong. That's going to hurt for a long time. But fear not, our first pick in 2019, number 12 overall, was Brett Beatty. I know, that didn't make you feel any better. In 2018, our first pick was Jared Kelenic. So, and that was the big Edwin Diaz trade. In 2017, our first pick at number 20 was David Peterson. So, okay, is that 10 years yet? One more year. So in 2016, our first pick was Justin Dunn. So in the last 10 years so far, so you got Justin Dunn, David Peterson, Kelenic, Brett Beatty, Armstrong, Kumar Rocker, Kevin Parada, Colin Hewitt, and Carson Benj and Mitch Voigt. They're too young. But you have one superstar. You probably got one superstar player, but he plays for another team, Pete Crow Armstrong. And then you have one all-star. So David Peterson, he's an all-star. Then in 2015, I don't know why. It feels like I've never heard of this kid. Desmond Lindsay, number 53 overall. He was picked in 2015. In 2014, our top pick was Michael Conforto. 2013, Dom Smith. 2012, Gavin Cicchini. 2011, Brandon Nimmo. 2011. 2010, Matt Harvey. 2009, Steve Matz. 2008, Ike Davis. 2007, Eddie Kuntz. 2006, Kevin Mulvey. 2005, Mike Pelfrey. 2004, Philip Humber. 2003, Lastings Millage. 2002, Scott Kazmir. And 2001, Aaron Howman. Look at all the studs in the last 25 years. I mean, a couple all-star appearances here and there. Michael Conforto, Brandon Nimmo, Matt Harvey. But all in all, I mean, superstar in the last 25 years. Do we have one superstar on that list? Yeah, I mean, I predict PCA is the only superstar in the 20. I mean, think about that, folks. In the last 25 years, have we drafted a superstar in the first round? Only one time, and we traded him away for a rental. I don't know why I'm hoping PCA just has a mediocre career. I'm just hoping. Shoot. You know, I guess if you look at if the Mets ever drafted a superstar with their first round pick, I know they have guys like DeGrom, but with their first round pick, I'm looking at their entire history. If they ever drafted a superstar, not an all-star, superstar, like that somebody who could be a top player in the game, I would have to say that the only people I see on this list are Darryl Strawberry, which they picked him number 1 in 1980, and Dwight Gooden in 1982, number 5 pick. Those are the only two superstars. I and some people might not consider them superstars, but I think Doc Gooden in 85. I mean, these guys had superstar level years. Game, that's a good question. Has Drew Gilbert gotten a hit for the Giants? I know his first game, he had a very bad first game, and I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't so unhappy about that. But let's see. Yeah, he has one hit. He's 1 for 17. He's batting .059. He's got an OPS of 118. So he's looking okay. He's looking okay if you're a Met fan. But the guy in that. Let me see. How's Blade Tidwell doing? So no alarms yet. Drew Gilbert has been looking pretty bad. Uh-oh. So I'm just trying to look at Blade Tidwell's stats. I'm just trying to make sure that he's doing bad. Nah, I'm just playing. No, actually, Blade Tidwell, he's doing very decent. He's had two starts, and he's pitched to 1.80 ERA, and strikeouts in 9. He's averaging 14.4. He has 16 strikeouts in 10 innings. And to be honest, that was the guy that, out of all the guys we let go, Blade Tidwell was the guy that, even though I put him on the list that I would trade, but I would have wanted a little more in return, more than a rental and more than a guy who, like Tyler Rogers. Rogers is a nice guy. He's a nice luxury to have, but he's also a guy that I just, the package just, it still doesn't sit right. And at the time I said I would have done it, but, I thought the team was at a lot higher of a level. I mean, we see what we're playing with right now. Like, you can't give up that package for Tyler Rogers if the team is this sucky. It's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. One for 17. We should have kept him. He fits right in with this offense. Yeah, no, you're right. He does. But, people are really upset, when you trade the number 1 draft pick, every time you get a number 1 draft pick. But in reality, when I went over the number 1 draft picks in the last 25 years, we probably should have traded a couple of those draft picks. I mean, Kevin Parada, years ago, we could have traded him. We could have got value back. So, I mean, it's if you got the right trade out there, you got you got to be able to pull the trigger. But, it seemed like we were a lot further away than making one trade. I think everybody would have went insane if the Mets got a starting pitcher, would have went completely insane. But again, right now, if we would have got a Sandy Alcantara and gave up a Jet Williams, how silly would we have looked? Because we're not a Sandy Alcantara away from being a World Series contender. In fact, I'm just curious. Like, I haven't been, I was watching and all these guys before the trade deadline. Sandy Alcantara in his last couple of games. Here you go. Sandy Alcantara. Last game, Miami, 5 innings pitched, 5 runs allowed. Do we need that? No. The game before that, 7 innings pitched, but he gave up 6 runs. So Sandy Alcantara, to Game's point, probably would have fit right in with this pitching staff. But again, we would have had to give up a Jet Williams. I mean, the only pitcher that I probably would have considered it would have been for a guy like Garrett Crochet. But that ship has sailed. The PCA trade was a knife to the heart in retrospect. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I think it makes a guy like David Stearns even more conservative at the deadline because he doesn't want to give up the next PCA. So it really didn't do a lot of good for this organization. It really did not. Hopefully, I think what would make the Mets feel better, fans would feel better. Okay, so what will make the Mets fans feel better is if Carson Bench, the guy we drafted number 1 overall last year, turns out to be a complete stud. I don't think you're going to feel all the way better, but if he comes up and he plays center field and he's a perennial all-star, I think that'll help to alleviate some of the burden. And because Carson Bench in the minor leagues, he's played on 3 different levels this year. He's batting .307, 12 home runs, 60 RBIs. And he went into a recent slump because he was hitting much better than that. But, he's a guy that's shown a lot of promise. And, the funny thing is, Nolan McLean was announced, I think on a Wednesday, Tuesday, that he was going to pitch. And the night before he was announced, we predicted on the show that it would be McLean. But to be honest, it wasn't really a surprise that it's McLean over Sproat. It's the way it lined up in the rotation. I think McLean's going to be on 5 or 6 days rest, which lines up with his last start. Sproat just didn't. His last start just didn't line up with this start. So we get to see McLean on Saturday. And, again, that is the Mets' future. That is what I think, most of us are excited about. But, folks, I'm going to kind of get going. Like I said, I got that big chiropractor appointment in the morning. But if you can just hit the like button. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. It really helps the channel. Turn on notifications so you know when we're going live. And again, if you have any suggestions about anything, let me know. Let's not take these Mets too seriously right now because they're not playing with their hearts. But I'm going to talk to everybody. Hopefully you all have a great night. 2:30 right now. So, have sweet dreams. Maybe the Mets win in dreamland. But have a good night, everyone.